All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Laura Hetzler, and I'm a Pre-Med and Health Science Center advisor here at Wayne State University. I am looking forward to presenting a lot of information to you all about med school application. Before I get started, I wanted to just do a quick question, just so I'm aware. If you could give me a show of hands, thumbs up, whatever. How many of you are planning to apply this current cycle? Okay. Looks like the majority. Okay, great. And there's a question, yeah. The question that I have for you would be, is there anyone who's planning to apply Canadian? I don't know, Lisa, does that mean you're planning to apply Canadian? Okay, well, we'll assume that means no. Yes. All right. It's a ton of information that I can share with you. So here's kind of our top goals today. Hopefully these align with what you're hoping to get out of the session. First one is understanding and navigating the application portals. The second one is learning a little bit more about the nuance of the application timeline and helping yourself set some priorities as you navigate the time, and identifying resources that you can use, both in terms of, website or online things, as well as some tips and tricks for navigating. So those are our big picture 3 goals as we go forward. I want to make sure we take a moment and kind of define the purpose of the application services. So for our purposes today, there are 3 different types of, there's 2 types of medical schools in the United States. One is the MD or allopathic, the other is DO or osteopathic. There are actually 3 US med school application portals. The MD application portal is called AMCAS. The DO is called ACOMAS. And I throw this out there just because you'll probably see it on Reddit. There's actually a portal specific to Texas schools called TMD-SAS. We're not going to really talk about that. You're probably only going to get into use TMD-SAS if you're from Texas and you're applying to one of their programs. They factor geography very heavily in that application portal. So we're just going to move past that. But anyway, we look at all of these application services are online portals that are designed to collect information that all programs want to know. This includes things like name, address, social security number, all that biographical background information. It includes what classes you've taken, the letters of evaluation, your information about your resume and how you've stayed busy, and your personal statement. This is what we call the primary application. So it's sort of the first step in the process. The AMCAS application for MD, has about 154 schools in it. To navigate to it, I recommend going to aamc.org, going to the Applying to Medical School tab, and then applying to medical school with AMCAS. The reason I'm sending you this direction is twofold. First of all, the actual direct link, which I will share after the presentation in a resource email. It's long and complex. But also within this particular page on AMCAS, you will see a ton of additional resources, including a calendar that updates, shares information about where AMCAS is in terms of dates and deadlines. It has the entire PDF that guides you through AMCAS, which is sort of the ultimate directions to the system, and it's a great place to resource if you have very, very specific questions. Just a ton of different resources you can get to from this Applying to Medical School with AMCAS page. This page is what the landing page for the AACOMAS website. There are about 47 distinct programs you can indicate, because many times a DL school that might have multiple campuses is actually going to direct you to apply to your campuses of interest. So that's why it's 47, even though there aren't 47 individual DO schools in the country. It has its own applicant help center. It's not quite as comprehensive as the MD one, but still pretty useful. I will tell you at this point, the information you can see here on this page that I've captured still is talking about sort of the 23-24 AACOMAS cycle closing on April 12th. I expect that this page will get updated shortly. Your first step, no matter what you have to do, is going to be to create an account. If you've never been to either one of these, so people who have never applied before, as opposed to those who might be reapplicants, it's going to start by asking you some personal information. There are going to be questions you need to answer about sort of the really, really basic things. Your name, your gender, the AMCAS application will ask you at this point to include your AMCAS ID. So I want you to make sure you've got that information with you when you start the process. And AACOMAS actually has you start with selecting a program. So it doesn't really matter for the purposes of getting the process rolling what program you select. Many of our students will start by selecting Michigan State's College of Osteopathic Medicine. But this is sort of the very basic things that you're going to have to do to create an account before you move on. Once you've done that, I want to make sure that you have access to the different resources that can help you navigate the system. Both of these organizations have got contact us information. There's a contact us button on the AMCAS landing page under the application. AACOMAS provides their direct email. I do think that the phone numbers can be good ways to stay on top of what's going on. Be prepared that you might be on hold for a while if you do need to call them and ask specific questions. So have something else to work on while you're on hold. And then the last two resources that I've started for you are the resources that specifically talk about requirements at different medical schools. We don't get into them too much in this presentation, but they are a critical piece of the application journey for each candidate. Each portal also has some very specific dates that you want to keep track of as you go. As you might know, today is the first day in 2024 that students can begin the application cycle. You might make a note to yourself at this point that if you are beginning to edit your AMCAS application, you want to be editing the 2025 application, not the 2024, if you do still see the 2024 out there. AMCAS refers to their application cycle by the year that you would enter medical school. So in May of 2024, you are applying to be in the entering class of 2025. First day to submit is May 28th. They spend a certain amount of time verifying each application and cross-checking information. We'll get into that in a little bit. And then about a month later, AMCAS begins to release information to medical schools. That means that early July is another busy period when medical schools finally have information about candidates and can begin inviting candidates to fill out secondary applications. If you're interested in applying early decision to a single school, that deadline's August 1st. And then the first date of regular admission begins in the middle of October, so October 15th. At that point, most of the processing and engagement you're going to do with application portals is over. In winter, you might be sending updates through school-specific portals as needed. ACOMAS is a little more flexible in terms of how they handle things. May 6th, so next week, is the first day that their application opens. You can actually submit the ACOMAS application on the first day of editing, but I wouldn't recommend it. And what we know about DO admission cycle is there is a lot of, about 50% of the applications for DO programs will be in by July. So that's really very, very similar to what we see happening on the MD application side. And then ACOMAS does allow academic update periods. This would be times at which they'll accept updated grades for classes that were in progress at the time of submitting your initial application. So if you're taking a class right now, maybe you're taking genetics or something, and you want to be able to report that class out to Michigan State or other DO schools, you could do so in early September, early October. So those are things to know. The MD application does not allow for that. I mentioned the word verification. This comes up a lot when probably on Reddit and other social media, but also in talking with your academic advisors. Verification is our word for the processing that happens behind the scenes at the application services. This is where the application service is going to review the material you submitted. They're going to match your course entry that we'll talk about in a moment to your official transcripts. They're going to see if there are any issues. If you're a reapplicant, they're going to compare your current application to your previous one to see if there's any data points that have changed. And all of this takes time. There's over 50,000 people annually who submit MD applications. So on the MD side in particular, there can be a delay in processing. Understanding this delay sometimes makes students anxious. So we will talk to you about what makes the most sense for you as an individual in the bigger context of this process, about submitting, about expecting results, about when things are going to happen. After verification happens both with MD and DO, information will be forwarded to medical schools. The one little thing that the DO program does differently at this point is they actually, there's a box, they will now ask you to check if you would like your information released to the DO programs before you hit submit. So if you've added a school to your programs that you're interested in list, and you've indicated that your information can be released, you can at that point start accepting outreach from the school you're interested in. I'm personally a big advocate of privacy. I will say in this circumstance, that might give you the opportunity to engage with some people from admissions teams around the country to learn a little bit more about their program so you can become a stronger candidate. So there is an upside to doing it that way. Okay. So that is some really basic stuff, that overview of the MD versus the DO portal, quick tips to get started, some basic vocabulary and calendar information that you want to have in the back of your mind. That's a foundation for the rest of the process. Big picture, I want you to understand most Wayne State students apply to both programs. That's because, one of the oldest med schools in the state is the Michigan State DO. And so many of our students are applying both MD and to Michigan State's College of Osteopathic Medicine, even if that's the only DO school they apply to. Generally speaking, the data and other background information they're collecting is the same. It's just a question of the format. So that the goals of each application, your goals as a writer and candidate, should be consistent across both platforms. Today, my hope is to share the basics with you point out the most significant differences in the MD app versus the DO. You will certainly notice more fine points as you are working through each program, but I want to help you understand big picture, the things that will be the most difference and that will have the biggest impact on your application. And I really want to help you build your knowledge base for a successful cycle. Understanding what your goal is and understanding how to navigate it successfully is a huge component in this. Because the biggest difference that we see in terms of where our students are successfully applying has fundamentally to come down to metrics. It's not the quality of patient contact or the range of experiences or whether or not you wrote a personal statement DO versus MD. Biggest difference, as you can probably tell, is that MCAT score. GPAs for our successful candidates, MD versus DO, are around the same. So nationally, we're at a 3.75 overall and about a 3.7 in the sciences for AMCAS with that 512 MCAT. ACOMAS is around a 3.6 overall with a slightly lower, like 3.5 science for ACOMAS, but that 503 MCAT score is significantly lower than the 512. We also, really want to, cannot stress enough how important that is. Yes, someone's got their hand raised.
Yeah, are these data points for accepted students or just the applicants?
No, those are accepted students.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I want you to stop and consider your metrics as you decide where to spend your time and energy. Because there are differences in the two portals. Most students find that they will prioritize one and focus on that. It is very, very difficult to do both things at the same time and do them both well. So I want you to think about your own numbers and how they relate to these national data points. If you don't know your grade point average, or if you have a couple repeats in there and you want to know what that verified grade point average that includes all of the attempts of all the grades, if you want some help with that, academic advisors are here to help in this office. If you don't have your MCAT score yet, I strongly encourage you to wait for that information before you submit. Any other questions about this piece? All right. So one of the areas that gives us gets the most questions, drives a lot of anxiety, and seems the most overwhelming is this coursework entry topic. It's something that many students tackle early on in the process. So we're going to start here. Any ideas what the number 52 is on the bottom of the screen? So 52 is the average number of courses that candidates will enter into the application portal, typically from 2 to 3 different institutions. So let's talk about this a little bit. Requesting transcripts is an important step in this process. And it is an important first step before you begin transcript entry. Okay. You need to know that you are going to need multiple copies, right? Most importantly, you need one for your own use. Can't use DegreeWorks, can't use kind of registration info. You need to use your transcript. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is the way that it sorts your semesters. If you have it, if you look at DegreeWorks, we are sorting by graduation requirement. This is much easier if you have your transcript, which is sorted by semester. It also helps you see exactly what the schools will see when they, or I'm sorry, not the schools, what the application portal will receive from our registrar. So again, you're getting the best data source to work from. Do you want one for your own use? You're going to have to send an official transcript to each application portal that you're completing. And you have to remember to send copies from every school attended. So if you're a transfer student to Wayne State, or if you did a guest semester at another college, you do need to send official records from that other school, even though those courses are also reflected on your Wayne State transcript. The only exception to this is AP or IB. You do not need to send an AP or IB score report to the medical school because they are going to trust what we used as your equivalent courses, and that is reported in your first semester of university. Yes, question. Mazen.
Should we request an official one for our own use, or should we just use the unofficial one that we can see?
I don't think it makes that much of a difference. But you definitely, I think the bigger point is you definitely want to use a transcript and not degree work or some other variant.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking. We have directions available on an application resource page. And I'm going to actually show you that right now. I'm also going to send this, but this is a great source for additional info. Ooh, okay. Hopefully you can see this. This is a landing page on our website that has a ton of application resources, including transcript request instructions by application portal. So these are shot by shot with directions of how to go about doing the transcript request. You'll also notice there's a lot of other things here, like a video library, some information specific to working activities, letters of eval, and then application work sessions, which we will talk more about later. Okay. Nope, I lost my script. Okay. Oh, I'm going to drop this in the chat also as well, because this is something many of you might be using in the next 48 hours. The other point I want to make about transcript requests is that other schools could have different procedures for sending transcripts. Mazen, do you have another question, or is your hand still just raised? I guess that means it's just raised. All right. So, like we said, there are going to be about 52, give or take, classes that you might be entering in the application portal. So you're going to do your best. Okay. It can be a little stressful, like I said, and overwhelming to kind of feel like you have to go in and do this. First thing to know is that there are coursework code guides in the directions for each application. And this is going to tell you when you're entering your English class, how you should code it, because you're going to be entering the semester in which you took it, the department of the course, the number of the course. So in this case, it would be English would be the department and 1020 would be the number, the title of the course, the grade you earned, and what kind of class it was. Okay, so there are some very detailed guides in each application portal that can help you decide that if it's not obvious. Common ones that students worry about, things like honors, things like directed study. So there's information there to help you with that process. The next thing I want you to know about this as you approach transcript entry is that Wayne State follows a semester format. There are lots of different options in here, but you're following the semester format, and there are differences between the way AMCAS defines this and ACOMAS. So this is a great thing to jot down. AMCAS has a semester system that starts in summer and then goes fall, and then has what it calls spring. the summer, there are several things that might be labeled summer. We've got a summer semester, we've got a summer 1, we've got a summer 2. There's not a huge difference in terms of how you select those semesters, but knowing that academic year starts in the summer, then goes to fall, and then goes to spring is important as you begin your entry. What that also means is that it's a little bit different than the Wayne State transcript reporting system. Here at Wayne, our academic year begins in fall and then has winter and then has spring, summer. So that if you took a class at the end of your freshman year here at Wayne, we would put it in your sort of first 12 months with us. However, AMCAS would put that same class at the beginning of your sophomore year. So that's an important distinction to understand. ACOMAS is like Wayne in that they have a fall, they have a winter, they have a summer, and it follows the same format we do, which that same class at the end of your freshman year in summer would be at the end of your freshman year instead of the beginning of your sophomore. The reason this matters is that schools are going to eventually develop a GPA for you, and it's based on year in college. So freshman year, sophomore year, junior year. So Mia, you've got a question.
Yeah, I saw in the application under the
So I'm gonna pause, which application?
the AMCAS
Okay.
application.
Yeah.
When entering the coursework by semester, there's also an option that says mini semester, spring, winter.
Right.
What would that be?
Not anything we do.
Okay.
You're gonna ignore that.
Okay. But the spring means winter, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for asking. Good question. Are there any other questions about this piece? No. Okay.
Sorry, I do have a quick
Oh, yeah.
question about the mini semester.
Yeah.
Would that be like a course that ended not throughout the entire semester, like it was half of a semester?
So it's kind of an East Coast thing, actually.
Okay.
So I had so like Princeton University used to, so it's kind of very specific. It's very Ivy League. So they have a semester that ends in December, and then they had about 6 to 8 weeks off. And within that was an optional mini semester where you could do like 4 weeks on a topic. I don't know. And then you'd have like a week after that. And then their winter semester or their actual like second term of college that was for everybody would start after that mini semester was done. So it's this funny little class that kind of lives between the fall and what we would call winter. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
So if there's you took like an accelerated course, it would still count as like just a whole semester.
Yeah, or like let's say you took med term and you finished it in 4 weeks, like that's still something you were registered for the whole semester. Summer 1, summer 2 is that model of those 7-week classes that are sort of May, June. And then the July, August. Wayne doesn't offer a ton of classes that model, so that would be summer 1 would be the same as our straight spring semester. Summer 2 would be the same as our straight summer semester. But I think that if you took one of the 13-week classes, you could call it summer 1, you could call it summer. Yeah, it's not going to make a huge difference.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Okay. Here's some of the biggest questions we get about this and the things that, again, this is where we see these really anxiety provoking things. So the first one, what if I don't know what code to choose, right? You've looked at the whole list. You don't know where to put this honors class. You've looked at the whole list. You don't know your gender studies class was cross-listed in gender and sociology and ethics. Like, where do you put it? Big picture doesn't really matter that much. You're just going to make your best choice with the information available to you. You're going to pick something and you're going to move on. As long as you're not trying to put a social science class as a biology, it's gonna be okay. All right. Another one, what if what I typed is not, like I typed out instead of writing, like Wayne uses a lot of abbreviations in the chemistry courses. What if I typed out General Chemistry 1 instead of writing Gen Chem 1? That's fine. That's gonna be okay. Students who are feeling a little anxious about this piece, you might choose to transcribe it exactly as it appears on that official transcript to know that what you're putting down on paper replicates exactly the transcript. But they're smart people. They've done hundreds of these, thousands even every year. They're gonna know that bio or biol means biology and vice versa. What if you make a mistake? This is a tough one because I know it does say, you know, be very careful. There's like a big warning, be careful because, you know, errors can cause this to be sent back to you and delay your processing. Yes, that is true. I've only ever worked with one student who had it rejected, and it deserved to be rejected because the semesters were all wrong. They had everything, like it was a hot mess. They will make a certain amount of correction for you. They'll switch that gender studies to sociology if they think that's more appropriate. If you get your summer semesters wrong, they'll fix it for you. That's part of what takes a while in verification, is they're really cross-checking and cleaning up any minor errors a student made. Now, yes, if you, like I said, if you've made a superlative number of errors, they will send it back to you. That can delay processing. But mostly they're going to fix it and move on. Okay. Any other what ifs that are in people's heads as they consider this piece? No. Okay. Expect that this will take you about 2 to 3 hours per portal. Okay. That may sound like a lot, but big picture, it really isn't. This is a great thing to be working on if you're on hold, waiting for your other questions to be answered, or if you've got a question about transcript entry and it's about a specific item, or maybe some international course, some study abroad coursework. You could be plugging and chugging on the other aspects of the course entry while you wait on hold on a phone call. So, just a tip. Okay. So you've gotten your course entry done. Work and activities is sort of the number 2 priority for most students as they work through this. It's called work and activities in AMCAS. And in the ACOMAS application, there's a supporting information section that has something called achievements and something called experiences. This is sort of just, we're going to call this activities for our purposes for the rest of the afternoon. But this requires a lot of time, thought, energy, and persistence to do this piece well. I think that many students expect to spend a lot of time working on and editing their personal statement. Sometimes this section is a surprise in terms of the amount of time it's going to take you. Okay, big picture. Your goal in completing this section should be to highlight the range of experiences you've had, both things you've committed to over time for depth, and the ways you've explored your own skills, talents, interests, and attributes. This is an opportunity for you to connect to the competencies. You don't know what the competencies are, look it up. I'll send you a link later. This is a place where your values will come through, sometimes explicitly, but frequently it's going to be implicit. It's going to be implied through the ways you've chosen to spend your time. For example, if you tell me in your personal statement that you are very committed to service to the underserved, I expect to see a lot of that commitment to service represented in your activity entries. Okay. And ultimately, you boil it down to its simplest components. Each activity entry is going to be a what and a so what. Okay. So what do I mean by this? First thing to know, nuts and bolts. There are even though our big picture goal is the same, the way that these get structured within each application portal are quite different. Okay. AMCAS, you have a maximum of 15 entries that you can utilize. Each entry is character limited at 700. And there will be a question at the end of each write-up that says, was this a most meaningful experience? And if you say yes, an additional text box of 1325 characters will open up. As a side note, remember characters includes spaces and punctuation, okay? AMCAS has an extensive list of experience types. I think we're up to 19 ways that you can categorize things. You can be strategic with this. Again, it is all user defined, so you're going to choose how you want to tag this, what type of experience you want to use as a label. And they do allow a future end date. So you can project all the way out to the end of the next, sort of to matriculation in medical school. So the application that's open should have an end date, I think, of sometime in August of 2025. ACOMAS is different. One thing that's great about ACOMAS, despite the fact that their description boxes are limited at 600 characters, you have an unlimited number of boxes. So in some ways, you might be able to explore ideas or explore experiences in writing to a greater extent than you could in AMCAS. There are about 5 experience types. However, as I mentioned, there's actually an achievement section separate from experiences. So if you wanted to talk into your achievement section about something unique you were able to do, like winning an award, having a poster, being, recognized as a top producer at work or something, you have actually a separate section dedicated to that. So again, that gives you a little more flexibility there. The other thing that's different about ACOMAS is you can add new experiences after you hit submit. AMCAS, there's extremely limited things that you can update after submission. ACOMAS, we've already talked about, you can do a grades update and you can do an experience. You can add new experiences after you submit. Neither of those features is available to you in AMCAS. So continue to think about nuts and bolts. When you're doing each experience name, and this would definitely be worth a screenshot if you haven't done it already. These are the fields that you will fill out at the top of each activity entry. They ask for slightly different things, okay? Most of this is user defined. What I want to point out here, what's called the experience name in AMCAS and what's called the title in ACOMAS are fairly long fields character-wise. They can be a great place to utilize or be strategic so that you can then save characters in your experience description or your experience details. Okay. AMCAS, if you'll see under hours, AMCAS, you can have a repeated activity and you can add up to 4 ranges. So one example would be if you have a summer job that you've gone back to 4 years in a row, rather than using 4 spaces or worrying that your hours weren't being represented accurately, you can actually mark that repeated and then have up to 4 date ranges under there. ACOMAS does not have that flexibility, but again, you've got unlimited boxes if you do want to add something. Contact name and title is consistent across. And then ACOMAS asks you within each activity, permit to contact, yes or no. AMCAS just assumes that you're releasing that, giving that permission to release by the factor of including it in your application. A couple of the things that ACOMAS does, that recognition type, compensated, volunteer, or per diem. So compensated being paid per hour, I guess, volunteer, and then per diem, sort of per job completed. It's a fine distinction. My big one is, were you paid or were you unpaid? Were you compensated or volunteer? Per diem also might be maybe a little more occasional work, every so often. for that paid experience. And then status, full-time, part-time, temporary, again, temporary is reflecting that occasional, not 4 hours a week, but every so often you work there temporarily. And we will talk in a minute about the difference in terms of how they calculate hours. So important points as you consider this part of the application. First thing I want you to do, every single one of you, do your draft entries in a doc. I don't care if it's a Word doc, a Google doc, whatever it is you like, do your draft in a doc. If you start typing in these boxes, what we frequently see is that students will get typing and it'll take a couple sentences to get their ideas flowing, and then they'll really be into the moment, and then they keep typing, but they can't because the box stops them. So do it in a doc. Save the editing for later. What do I mean by that? Think about your entire list of how you've spent your time. Okay. If you find that you have, let's say, more than 15 things for the MD application, as you look at it, are there things that are more of a priority? Are there things that were maybe only done once or twice and not worth including? Are there things that maybe weren't a huge amount of time, but you want to make sure they're in there because they show your breadth? Are there things that should be combined, things that should be separated? These are all considerations you want to take into account as you decide your strategy for tackling this section. Ultimately, it's an opportunity to document your journey, and everything that goes into it is up to you. Okay, there's not a right or wrong. You just have to make some choices. Make sure you have at least an email or phone number for all of your contact people, no matter what. So again, if you haven't gotten that information gathered before now, this is a great time to do that over the next couple of days. And please use your best guess for hours and start date. Nobody is checking a logbook. Nobody's checking a time card. Just use your best estimate and don't overinflate, okay? So I mentioned that AMCAS and ACOMAS have different hour calculations. So again, this is maybe a thing to note. AMCAS is looking for a start date, an end date, and a total number of hours. They are not asking you to, like, so for example, if a student works like a contingent, I've had a lot of students who maybe were a contingent nurse assistant. So they picked up shifts whenever. But in the 6 months between, September and spring break of their freshman year, they worked a little bit in the fall. They worked a bunch over winter break and spring break. But the other times of the year was a little bit lighter because they were actively taking classes. AMCAS doesn't care. AMCAS is just give us the date range and the total number of hours. We'll assume it's going to work itself out. ACOMAS actually wants to know your hours per week and the total number of weeks. So if you haven't been tracking it that way, or if you, like I said, maybe you're contingent someplace, you work more sometimes than others, there's not an even math on that. So in that case, what you want to do, so again, write this down. You're going to take your total number of hours that you recorded. You're going to count up the number of weeks that you spent doing that activity, and you're going to divide your total number of hours by the number of weeks worked. And then you're going to plug that data into the portal. It's going to mathematics things for you, and you should get, so you're going to put your hours per week and your total numbers week, and then the total that it develops should match what you have in your records. So just a little tip on that one. Okay, so we've talked about.
Sorry, I just had a quick question.
Yep, go for it.
Do you mind repeating that? Just so, like you said, hours per week, and then.
Yeah, so ACOMAS, again, if we look back here, if you look here, they want to know their hours per week and your total weeks. But most people have been tracking their hours, not per week. So what you want to do is you want to take those total hours that you've logged You want to figure out how many weeks you spent on that activity. So if it was, 13 weeks, and it was 130 hours, you divide your total hours that you've logged by the total number of weeks that you've been there. And that will give you an estimated hours per week, right? Oh,
Oh,
give
okay,
you an
thank you.
estimated hours per week. So then you're gonna plug that into this field and then the total weeks into the second field, and then it should give you an approximate total that resembles what you've logged. Is that clearer?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. All right, we went through that. Okay, some tips for writing. All right, like I said, this takes maybe more time than you've been planning. And it's worth noting that there are actually more characters available to you in the work and activities section than there are in the personal statement, right? So it's just as important, okay? Sometimes students like kind of a general formula. If you're sort of not sure how to get started, here's a general suggestion. You might start with a sentence describing the organization or group, particularly if they are Wayne State, Southeast Michigan, Detroit specific, or maybe something that's specific to a particular cultural group, something that is not widely known. Okay, so I'm thinking, for example, like CASA, the Chaldean American Student Association is a very active pre-health group on campus. But outside of Southeast Michigan, you may not find a lot of people who know what that is. So that might require a sentence, as opposed to the American Red Cross, right? So thinking about whether or not you need that sentence for context. I want to know what you did, okay? So 1 to 2 sentences with your tasks is usually appropriate. Hopefully, there will also be space for 1 to 2 sentences of takeaway. So when I say the what is those first 3 to 4 sentences. And the so what is that last sentence, okay? Now, like I said, this is a general formula. If you are talking about something like research, I might actually expect more sentences that are task-based, because you're trying to help me as a reader who's unfamiliar with a very technical activity to understand what you did. You may not always have time to directly connect what you got out of it for your audience member. But that's where it's important to rely on some of the implicit messaging in your application. A lot of this will come through without you having to say every single time, I will be a better doctor as a result of this experience because, right? You might say that once or twice in the entire application. But I want a lot of this to come through. And again, not just how things relate to you in your medical future, but your growth as an individual, your growth as a person, as a humanist, whatever it is, as a researcher. I should get those moments of growth and insight throughout, okay? I said at the beginning, don't worry about characters when you start writing. You're gonna put this in a doc, you're gonna put it all down. But one of the best things you can do to manage your characters is use your space at the top. So what do I mean by this? I'm gonna go back to this slide. Here in this experience name field, all right? You can write, like, let's say you are a researcher in a project for the School of Medicine. You could simply write experience name, research assistant. Okay, it's not wrong. Certainly gives me the information that I need to continue to reading. But ultimately, it is going to be more interesting the more detail you give me. So if you've just written research in that top part, then, oh wait, I want to go back. Then in this experience description, you need to tell me the name of the lab you were at. You need to tell me what the lab did. And then hopefully you've still got characters left to tell me what you did, okay, within this larger scope of the project. So you end up using or wasting an opportunity, which is you could write up here under experience name, you could write, lead research assistant, and trainer, let's say, that helps me understand, gives me a little, it's kind of a secret way to use some characters. You can also use this contact name and title, or organization name. Maybe you put the name of the lab there. So there's a lab, I think it's called the Happy Lab. So obviously Happy is an acronym for something, but if you give me the long name here in organization, and then you put it in paren, now in experience description, I already know what the abbreviation is. You don't have to retell me. You've saved yourself probably 30 or 40 characters that you can then spend on expressing a more interesting idea than the name of the organization. Okay, you can do that across both portals. I strongly encourage you to think about that. Another thing that you need to keep in mind is add, don't repeat. Okay, that means entry to entry. It also means activity entry versus personal statement. Okay, again, we are playing a game with characters here. I don't want to hear something in your personal statement that then you've again said basically the same thing in your activity entry. Okay. Remember that you don't really need a transition sentence. A lot of times when students do their first drafts of these, and this is okay, and it's normal and it's fine, and don't be afraid to do it in your first draft, which is to say, during my freshman year in college, I spent time working as a research assistant in Dr. Jones's lab. Every single thing I just said is also apparent up here. Okay, you don't need to tell me that. And then, like I said, ignore that character count at the beginning, get your ideas out, and then we can always get things down to count. I want you to plan how you use your stories. Now, there is one large advice giving person / organization out there who says every single write-up should have a story. And I would argue that's not true, because if all you're doing is telling me stories, a lot of the context of that story is going to be about somebody else. And if every single one of your stories, if you have used your description area for a story every single time, I probably haven't learned very much about what you did. So plan your stories wisely. And again, I don't want repeated stories. I don't want a story in your working activities to turn up here as well. Okay, so plan that carefully. All right. When you've gotten that draft done, I want you to pause and consider whether you've effectively communicated the following things. Okay. Because big picture, I should be able to understand more about you as an individual than just the tasks you completed while you were preparing to apply to medical school. I want to know skills you've developed. I want to know how this impacts you as a future physician. So you really want to take that moment to pause and say, okay, I feel like what I learned the most through my time with the American Red Cross is the importance of, being actively engaged in, I don't know, some of the non-health things they do, right? I really opened my eyes to the value of disaster relief or something, right? And then look at your writing and think about whether or not the writing actually communicated that main idea. All right. Okay. Those two pieces take up most of the time in filling out this application. We're going to do a brief mention of letters of evaluation. First thing you want to make sure that you know the requirements for the programs you will be applying to. I'm going to throw out here, Wayne State does not have a committee letter. If a school wants to see a committee letter or prefers a committee letter, they probably also have a list of the things they will accept in substitution of a committee letter. Okay, so review those. If you still have people to ask, Or if as you're looking at schools, you're like, oh, shoot, I really need to get a letter that talks about, you know, a second science letter that I hadn't planned on or whatever. Make those asks in person or in a virtual setting. It helps us as letter writers to understand that you value our time. It helps us remember who you are and kind of the rapport you've hopefully established over the past few years. So do that to the extent that you can. Now, obviously, if this is someone who you've been talking to, it's your research PI, you know that they're committed to writing you a letter, and they just need to know kind of when specifically you're putting stuff together in the system, that's different. But this is that sort of initial ask. You're going to enter the contact information in the application portal. It's going to send that person an email. Frequently, these emails, especially if it's someone who doesn't write often, will end up in a spam or junk folder. So after you put their contact information in and are getting ready to take the next step, let your writer know. I just got an email from a student today. Hey, Laura, just keep an eye out for this notification. So that's the big thing to know at this point. Yeah, Alana, go ahead.
So I have a few letter writers that I've contacted in the past when I thought I was gonna apply in like the previous cycle.
Mhm.
So how do you think I should go about asking them, even though it's been like a while since I've communicated with them?
The same thing. I mean, I would be making your asks in person. I would be in a position where you're willing to kind of update them on what happened previously, either, you know, if you submitted and weren't successful, or if you didn't end up submitting, or whatever it is. And then you're going to ask if they'd be willing to submit a letter again. Know that if you're reapplicants, you can certainly have some letters that are from the same people, and that all that has changed is that the date in the kind of in the header has been updated to the current cycle. I do encourage reapplicants to think about, is there another relationship that they've developed since their, you know, first application that they want to kind of lean into to submit to again, because you continue to grow between application cycles. So is there another letter that might support that growth? I will also say, so this brings up another point, which is stay in touch with their letter writers through the cycle. Stay in contact with them so that they know what's happening. You obviously should be sending them a thank you letter. I mean, letter writers take a couple of hours frequently to craft a letter in support of you. Let us know what happens. We want to know, once we've invested that time, what's going on. Okay. And then that makes any subsequent re-asks easy because they know what's been going on with you. Okay. Great question. Thank you, Alana.
Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Personal statement. Ideally, in my perfect world, every single Wayne State student would have their personal statement done by the end of spring break. Obviously, that's not what happens. But it is a big lift in terms of writing. Hopefully you guys all have some of this under control already. Oh, that font does not work on this background. Big question is, or what you're trying to answer, why I want to be a doctor in 5,300 characters or less. It's nice that the character count is the same across both portals, so you can potentially use the same personal statement for each one, although some students do choose to have a DO letter or personal statement and an MD one. So this kind of brings it back to that idea of knowing which portal you're going to prioritize. Had a student in the trying to apply to enter in 2023, and they had an MCAT score that we knew was low. It was like 498. We knew it was low. Decided to go through the cycle anyhow, and got, you know, didn't get very far because that number was low. And they had applied to kind of the schools that they were interested in. Okay, like this school sounds great. I want to be in this part of the country, was kind of by name brand as opposed to maybe some other pieces. Second time around, did retake the MCAT, got a couple of points up, about, you know, got a 503. made the decision very intentionally before going into the cycle that they were going to focus their energies on DO. Okay. Wrote a DO specific application. Really focused on the ways that the things he's done maybe lean into holistic medicine. Applied to a much broader range of DO schools than they had previously. Student got 11 interview invites and got 4 offers. Yes, as a result of shifting the MCAT score up a couple points, but also as a result of focusing their energies on where they were most likely to be competitive. So I want you to consider that as you think about all these different pieces and all of the different work that goes into this, if it makes sense based on your own metrics to focus more on one portal than the other. Okay. You've gotten all your classes in, your transcripts have been received by the application portal. You've done a great job writing up, editing, and being specific about your work and activities. Your letters of evaluation have been submitted. Note, I'm not going to say have been received. You can absolutely go through the process at the beginning without the letters being received. You don't even have to have all your names in to hit submit on the application portals. You've got your personal statement in there. You've picked some schools. You also don't have to have your entire school list done because you can go back in and add schools later. Okay. You don't have to have either AMC preview done. You don't have to have the Casper or Altius suite exams done, right? Those are all things that can kind of catch up with you because of how long verification can take. All right. So you're submitted, you're verified. I think I wanted to point out here that AMCAS and ACOMAS are a little bit different as we kind of get towards the end of the cycle. There is more writing called secondaries. And in AMCAS, those secondaries are going to start coming after you've moved through the verification process. Okay. But in ACOMAS, the schools can actually include the questions they want you to write about in the supplemental information area of the primary. Okay. So you may need to write them before you submit. All right. So just that's again one of those places where you're going to see a difference. ACOMAS is also going to force you to do prereq matching, which AMCAS will not. Okay. Well, it's optimal. Okay. Yep. We're going to go to, that is actually my next slide, Russell. Timeline, big picture. Okay. Ideally, you're going to get your primary submitted in June. Okay. You do not need to submit on the first day. I think one of the biggest mistakes that students make every year, not just at Wayne, but across the country, is to hit, they've read it somewhere online. They say you have to apply on the first day. So, you know, just testing your critical thinking skills a little bit. Do you think that only people who hit submit on the first day get into medical school? No. But what happens is the lighter, as medical schools get verified applications, they begin deciding who they want to interview. And then they start inviting those people to interview. The more people they've invited to interview, the fewer interview seats are left, right? This is a particularly important piece of the higher tier schools, to be honest. They tend to do fewer interviews. They tend to get through the process faster. It's very, very difficult to get through the front door at a top tier medical school, like a University of Michigan, like a Johns Hopkins. I'm going to say if you don't make the first data release. But most schools, you know, what I want to see is that application's in by June. All right. Letters and secondaries can catch up in July and August, but I want that entire package in by the end of August. This should all be off your plate if you're going to be a successful candidate before Labor Day. All right. And it is really really important to submit when you're competitive. And that's that combination of the numbers. So knowing you have that MCAT score, knowing that you're happy with your grades and the grades are at the national sort of that, you know, that 3.7. Knowing that your writing has accomplished what you wanted it to accomplish. And if you decide to wait, I think that that's a really mature, can be a really mature decision depending on what evidence is in front of you, right? Okay. Samia's question, when is the latest date in July letters of evaluation should be uploaded? Again, like I have friends nationally who don't write their letters until August. I think that's a little wackadoodle. I'd like to see the letters there, you know. Ideally, the letters are there by the same time your secondaries are, right? Nobody is going to read, very few schools do multiple reviews in the process. Most schools will only move you forward for review when every single piece is there. This is why it's kind of nice that the application portal gives you the option to remove or indicate a letter writer will not be sending their letter, because then your file can be more complete and ready for review. So the latest date in July would be whenever you get your secondaries done for that particular school. I know it's hard. I wish there was like a hard and fast date, but you'll also be happier if they're in like sometime in June. But you do have to be respectful of your letter writers' schedules, priorities, all of that. Again, just keep that open line of communication with them without bombarding them with emails every 48 hours. So. Okay. I knew this was going to go over 60 minutes, but it wasn't terrible. There's just so much information to cover and so many pieces that I think they can be stress points. So I wanted to kind of hit the most important ones. What I'd really like everybody to do, there's the QR code there if you're in a place where you can scan it with your phone. I did just drop the link in the chat. That is a place to do a very quick assessment, basically asking, do you know more than you did before? And also a place to log in, because what I'm planning to do tomorrow is I would really like to send you guys all some of the links that will be useful that I referenced in this workshop. So I'm also going to open it up at this point. If you want to unmute yourself and ask additional questions, we can spend a few minutes doing that. Can I share the link to the recording? Yes, but yes, I can absolutely do that. Yeah. All right, Angela.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So for under the schools attended section on the MCAS application, do I put my high school down under colleges if
No.
I got like, okay, because it says something about including it if it says this includes college courses taken while in high school. So I got, like the IB credit. So that's why I was asking.
That's not a college. So there's the high school question, because there is
Right.
schools attended, you're going to put your high school in.
Mm-hmm.
But what that specific question is referring to is dual enrollment.
Dual
So if you
enrollment,
did
okay.
both IB and dual enrollment, they need your dual enrollment school information, because there is an official transcript that needs to be collected from that institution.
Got it, thank you.
Make sense? You're welcome.
Yes.
Good question. Mia.
Hi, I actually have a question about early college courses.
Yeah.
So in the AMCAS application, so the last year that I was in at the community college was technically a year that I wasn't in high school anymore. It was like the year, technically it would have been like my freshman year, right? Do I enter that as freshman in the community college? Because whenever I transferred to Wayne State, I was still transferred as, like, I was called a freshman when I got here, but really I was a sophomore or a junior.
Yeah, the med school system hasn't really wrapped their mind around kind of the way that early college is actually, in fact, different from straight dual enrollment. I will tell you, the there's a couple different things you can do. You could chunk probably that's gotta be around 60 credits would be my guess.
I had like 71 credits from the community college.
Girl.
Yeah.
So, and how many credits do you have overall?
I think like
Like,
at Wayne State with the
Total
transfer.
100, all of the credits added together. You've got to have like 100.
Oh, like
You're
over
150?
150 probably. Like 100, maybe close to 160 credits. Because not all of them went here towards my degree.
Right, right. A lot of them
Yeah.
were like some.
And like AP credits and stuff.
Yep. So there's a couple things you can do. What it talks about in the AMCAS is basically what they want you to pick one system and go with it, right?
Uh-huh.
So you can do it either by credit hour or by academic year. One reason, and either way, you're going to have a credit imbalance somewhere. This applies for everybody who's got dual. Mia's just kind of an extreme example, but students who maybe have AP credit, IB credit, this also impacts kind of how you're going to navigate it as well. You might have a freshman year that had 45 or 50 credits in it because of AP, IB dual enrollment. And then, so you might say all of that I'm going to put in my freshman year. And then maybe your first year at Wayne State is your second year. And then your third year at Wayne State, I mean, your third year is really the second year you attended at Wayne State, and then everything else is going into your senior year. Or you might decide to do it straight by credit hour so that your first year, your first year early college on that transcript is your freshman year, your second year early college when you finish with them is year 2, your first year
Yes.
is year 3. You can do it either way. You just want to be consistent.
So the thing is that whenever I put in the year of like that it is on my transcript, the only option it gave me was to click high school, which was fine because it was during high school.
Mhm.
But like those after high school, it's picking up as it's either a high school freshman, sophomore, or whatever.
Right.
Yeah,
So you
after
can
those,
put
right.
you can put those all in freshmen. And if you want to chunk your first year at Wayne State in with that freshman year, you can.
So I would say the last year at the community college was my freshman year, and then my first year at Wayne State was also freshman year.
And
Okay,
the other
yeah.
thing, if it
I
was
called
like-
I called the AAMC and they like didn't even understand my question. So
yeah. The other thing you can do, I mean, sometimes students will end up with a super credit heavy senior year. I think sometimes where people might want to get strategic about that is if you had a grade dip in transitioning schools, putting that earlier is better because you want that, and it helps you generate that upward trend.
Okay, yeah. Because I think it would get confusing towards the
does.
end of the credits. So
It does.
okay, so I'll just put them
Okay.
there. Thank you so
Welcome,
much.
Mia. All right, Mark, how can I help?
I just wanted to know if you could go back to like the slide right before we talked about letters of recommendation.
Sure. This one?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to take a screenshot.
Yeah, do it. Good call. Nathan, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
All right, something I think I messed up when I applied last time was the Casper and review junk. When is the earliest? Ideally, when should I have those done
I
by?
mean, nationally, so my instinct is kind of affirmed with my colleagues nationally, which is that you can do that while you're waiting for verification.
Okay.
It's you want to know which schools you're applying to, who really has to have it, who's actually using it in their assessment process versus just recommending it. It's another expensive hoop to jump through. That's a really annoying one.
Oh, for sure, for sure.
So
Do they actually hold your, I don't know, reviewing your application until that stuff's in, if a school requires it, or
they
is that a black
could,
box?
if that's going to be a school by school decision.
Mhm.
The schools that are using it in Michigan currently are using it as an opt-in as opposed to an opt-out. So they would really only be looking at it if you were kind of a bubble candidate.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Gotcha. Thank you.
you're welcome. There's a question in the chat for dual enrollment. If the dual enrollment was 5+ years ago and the courses Were unrelated to my current degree or track, is the transcript required? Absolutely 100%. Anything you did at any secondary school of education, I don't care if you took one class there, has to go into the application. Yep. Go ahead, Mia.
Hi. So I came to Wayne State fall 2021, and it says that the semester started in August, but then that year the classes actually started September 1st. So on my application, does it matter? Okay. Thank you.
Those are the small details that like, they're super anxiety provoking at the beginning and like big picture. It's yeah.
Yeah, I'm like really stressed that they're gonna send it back to me for
They're,
something.
they're not. They're not. All right, Mark.
This is like, I don't know, kind of random, but so
Yeah.
I'm a non-science major.
Sure.
Like my major has like absolutely nothing to do with it. And I know like I have a lot of courses to put down.
Sure.
Is it mostly important to just put down like, I guess the courses related to my major, or I don't know how to put this, like, how do I like determine like which courses are like important?
You don't. You have to put everything in.
Okay.
You don't get a choice. They're literally going to go through your transcript and they're going to check your data entry against your transcript.
Oh, I see. See, when I saw the 52, I thought you meant like that's like the max that you should have.
Oh, no. That's like that's like an average student is going to enter about 52 classes.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes. Sorry if that was unclear. Clearly it was unclear. Mia, do you have another question? Is your hand just still raised?
Sorry about that.
No worries. No worries.
This is gonna be on the YouTube channel, right?
Yes, that's where this will get posted. Probably by the end of the week. Yeah, by Friday, should hopefully. Yeah, Mark.
Okay, and one other question. So if I graduate in December coming up here, but I plan on taking a gap year for like clinical experience and other stuff. So should I like, I don't know how to put this. I will be applying to the next cycle, but is there any way I can like alert the med schools I apply to, like, hey, like I'm also working on this while my application is being verified and whatnot?
Well, so if you're not applying this current cycle, right? That's what I'm hearing. So you graduate in December 2024.
Right.
You're going to take a gap year. So all of 2025, or are you just taking a gap semester? I think that's what I'm unclear about.
Initially I was thinking gap year, but I don't
Okay.
know if maybe a semester will be better in my situation.
When do you, so when we come back to this idea of where is it? Oh, no. I gotta find the right one. If what we're talking about is, I don't remember where I put it. Oh, here it is. It's on this one. This big note right here. Submit when you're competitive. Competitiveness is not related solely to metrics, right? So if you feel like you need that time to continue to develop your resume before you hit submit, you should do that.
Okay, that makes sense.
Med schools, this is a very, if it didn't come through and all that, like this is a very reflective process, and it is very challenging to reflect on something you haven't done yet. So yeah, and know that after graduation, we continue to work with alum on this. So just because you graduate, or just if you've got questions and you're not sure, again, that's why we're here. This sort of last screen talked about, application work sessions. I'll send the link to that. They're on the application resource page on our website that I shared earlier. Thank you. Oh, and the YouTube channel. Thank you, Nathan. That's also linked on the application resource page. We're here all summer. This is our biggest focus all summer, is helping students go through the process, decide whether they're going through this process, all of that. So yeah, Mia.
Sorry. So I saw the other day that it's either Michigan State MD or DO.
Mhm.
They're requesting a letter for someone to write on your behalf saying what you did during like a break between your college and applying to medical school. Basically, if you took a gap year, they're like requesting a letter for someone to speak on your behalf for like what you did during the gap year. I
Where
was just
are you,
wondering if
Mia,
that's like a
where are
common
you
thing.
finding that, Mia?
I saw it on their let me go to my Google. I saw it on their website. I don't remember if it's the MD or the DO, but one of them I noticed it because I was like, I have not seen any other school like
I would want to see
request
that. If you
that.
want to share that, like we
Yeah.
don't get to see them. We're going on the 14th. If I say we, I'm not actually going. Amanda. and
Yes.
Dr.
Okay, I even highlighted it here. Okay,
Yeah.
it's the MD program.
Okay.
And
Can you drop the
this
link
is,
in the chat for me?
oh, it's not the link, but oh wait, maybe this is the link. I saved the link. I like highlighted it on my thing I copy and pasted from them because I was like, I've never seen that requested. Let's see. They have a spot on their page. Oh, letters of eval. Let me see if I can find it.
Yeah,
in
I'm
here.
looking at this right now.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
huh. Okay, if you have taken, so if
yes,
you have taken a
yes, I
time
just
off
found it
between
too.
college and medical school, you should also send a letter of evaluation from a person who can comment about experiences during that period.
Yeah. So I was just because I'm someone who's taking a
Right,
gap year.
right.
I was just wondering like like I don't really I have aspirations for why I took a gap year and like
Sure.
what I'm planning on doing. But I mean, I don't have like that sorted out right now for like people to speak on that like my
Well,
behalf.
because you're just graduating right now, right?
I just graduated in December.
In December.
Yeah.
So I think this is more that like the second or third gap year.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. That's what I was wondering about because I mean, there's not
Right,
I mean, I haven't taken a huge break between. I don't yeah.
right. Yeah, I think this would be
Okay.
like if it was next year and you were applying,
Like you took 2 or 3 years
yeah,
between.
they
Okay.
want that reflection in
All
there.
right. But that's not like a common thing, right?
No,
For
it's not. And
taking
I
a gap
actually,
year.
yeah, I had not really scrolled down far enough. I mean, generally, yeah, no, I had not seen that in writing on their page.
Well, do you need me to send the link still or?
Nope, I got it. I found it.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you. All right,
Yeah.
thank you for clearing up.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Well, we are at 4:56, friends. I am done with my workday in 4 minutes. I appreciate you sticking around all this time, asking the extra questions. Please come see us and get support on this. Honestly, we do love doing it. I think that, you know, getting to reflect with you on the growth over your journey is really fun, but also wanting you to have the info you need to make a good decision for yourself, for your budget, for your time, I think is a really important value that our whole team shares. So thank you all for coming and expect to see something from me, if not tomorrow, by Friday. You're welcome.